In the quiet echo of a deserted schoolyard, a man forgotten by the world faced a choice: run and hide or stand and fight. Everyone saw him as just a janitor, the ghost in the hallways. But when three violent men descended upon the most powerful woman in the city, he was all that stood between her and a terrible fate. This isn't just a story about an attack. It's a story about redemption, about the hidden strength of a father's love, and the moment a simple mop became a weapon of justice. Get ready for a story that will challenge everything you think you know about heroes. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage, do us a favor. If you believe in everyday heroes, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more powerful, inspiring stories like this one directly to you. Now let's begin. The echoes of the everyday. The final bell at Oak Creek Elementary had long since ceased its shrill cry, leaving behind a profound silence that only an empty school can hold. For Art Bellamy, this was the best part of his day. The chaos of children's laughter, scuffling sneakers, and slamming lockers had been replaced by the soft, rhythmic swish of his mop moving across the linoleum floor of the main hallway. The scent of lemon-scented disinfectant hung in the air, a smell Art associated with order, with completion, a job he could actually finish. Art was a man built of quiet contradictions. His large, callous hands, capable of unclogging any drain or moving any heavy desk, could also braid his daughter's hair with astonishing delicacy. His broad shoulders, often stooped as if carrying an invisible weight, had once been proud and square in a different life. At 42, his face was a roadmap of past worries and present resignations, but his eyes, a warm, tired brown, still held a deep, gentle kindness. He moved methodically, his custodial cart, a rattling metal beast stocked with sprays, cloths, and tools, squeaking alongside him. This was his kingdom. The scuff marks he erased were his battles won. The sparkling floors were his monuments. To anyone else, it might seem a small life. For Art, after the spectacular failure of his previous life, small was safe. Small was manageable. His entire world was his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Her drawing of their family, a giant, smiling Art holding hands with a stick figure Lily under a giant sun, was taped to the side of his cart, right next to the official cleaning checklist. She was at Mrs. Gable's after-school program now, waiting for him to finish his shift. Every swipe of the mop, every trash can emptied, was for her. The tuition at Oak Creek wasn't cheap, but it was safe, and it was good. This job, as humble as it was, kept a roof over their heads and Lily in a place where she could draw sunny pictures. His radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. "Art, you still on site?" It was Brenda, the night security guard at the front gate. He keyed the mic clipped to his belt. "Yeah, Brenda. Just finishing up the East Wing. What's up? CEO's car is here. Ms. Thorne, for the community board meeting in the admin building. Just giving you a heads up. She's the last one in." "Copy that. Thanks." Art sighed. Elara Thorne. He'd seen her name on the donor plaques that lined the library wall. He'd seen her in the news, a whirlwind of sharp suits, sharper words, and billion-dollar deals. She was a universe away from the world of leaking faucets and lunchbox leftovers. He made a mental note to avoid the admin wing. People like Elara Thorne didn't look at people like him. They looked through them. An hour later, the school was dark and quiet. Art was taking out the last of the trash through the rear exit that led to the staff parking lot, which was adjacent to the large, sprawling schoolyard. The place set the soccer goals, the basketball court, all were bathed in the long, deep shadows of twilight. It was then that he heard it, not the normal sounds of the settling building or the distant city traffic. This was different. Raised voices, angry, sharp, and male. He squinted, looking across the yard toward the admin building's private lot. And he saw her, Elara Thorne, her posture rigid and defensive, facing three men who had encircled her. Her expensive briefcase lay on the ground, its contents spilled. Even from a distance, Art could see the fear in the set of her shoulders, the way she took a small, stumbling step back. Art's heart hammered against his ribs. "Not my business," the old, fearful part of him whispered. "Call security. Stay out of it. You're just a janitor." He fumbled for his radio, his fingers suddenly clumsy. "Brenda? Brenda, come in. There's a situation at the admin lot." Static was the only reply. The radio was dead. He'd forgotten to swap the batteries. He looked back. The situation was escalating. One of the men, a large guy in a hoodie, shoved Alara hard. She cried out, the sound sharp and clear in the evening air, and fell against her car. And in that moment, Art didn't see a powerful CEO. He saw someone's daughter. He saw Lily. The old fear was drowned out by a newer, more powerful force, a father's protective instinct. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a fighter. But he was a dad. And that was enough. His eyes fell on his mop, the handle worn smooth by his own hands. It was the only tool he had. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Arthur Bellamy pushed the door open and stepped into the deepening gloom of the schoolyard. A weapon of choice. The cool evening air hit Art's face like a splash of cold water, but it did nothing to quell the fire of panic rising in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to find another way, to be the cautious man he'd trained himself to be. But his feet, as if moving of their own accord, carried him forward. The mop handle, a simple length of seasoned wood, felt alien and foolish in his sweaty grip. It was a tool for cleaning up messes, not for stopping them. The three men were entirely focused on Alara Thorne, their threats low and guttural. Think you can just cut funding and ruin people's lives? The one in the hoodie snarled, grabbing her by the arm. "You're going to write a check right now, or you're going to regret it." Art's mind raced, discarding options. He was outnumbered, outmatched. He couldn't fight them, but he could create a distraction. He could be a problem they hadn't anticipated. He altered his path, moving not directly toward them, but toward the large, industrial dumpster enclosure near the parking lot's edge. His work boots were silent on the asphalt. For a big man, he knew how to move quietly, a skill learned from years of cleaning occupied offices without disturbing the occupants. Alara's voice, though laced with terror, was defiant. "The board's decision is final. This is insane. Security will be here any moment. Your security guard is taking a nice long nap." Another man laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "We made sure of it." Brenda. The news sent a fresh jolt of fear through Art. They were professionals. This was planned. His feeble hope of rescue evaporated. It was just him. He reached the dumpster and pressed his back against the cool, corrugated metal, peering around the corner. He was now only 20 yards away. He could see the desperation in Alara's eyes, the way her composure was cracking, revealing raw terror beneath. The man in the hoodie was pulling a zip tie from his pocket. They weren't just here to scare her. Art's eyes darted around his familiar kingdom, searching for anything. And then he saw it. The main water valve for the schoolyard's irrigation system. It was housed in a ground box just a few feet from him. An idea, born of sheer desperation and an intimate knowledge of the school's infrastructure, sparked in his mind. He had to get to that valve. Taking a deep breath, he did the last thing the men would expect. He stepped out from behind the dumpster, not with a battle cry, but with a loud, exasperated sigh, affecting the weary tone of a man just trying to do his job. "Hey!" Art called out, his voice sounding braver than he felt. "You guys mind keeping it down? I just mopped this whole area, and I'd like to get home to my kid." The effect was instantaneous. All three men spun around, startled. For a second, they just stared, their expressions shifting from shock to dismissive amusement. They saw a big man in a gray janitor's uniform holding a mop. They did not see a threat. "Get lost, custodian," the leader in the hoodie barked, waving a dismissive hand. "This doesn't concern you." "It does when you're messing up my clean parking lot," Art said, taking a few steps closer. His heart tried to pound its way out of his chest. He was positioning himself between them and the water valve box. He kept his body language non-confrontational, confused, playing part of the clueless maintenance man. Alara's eyes met his. He saw no hope in them, only a flicker of despair, as if his appearance had sealed her fate rather than offered a chance. The second attacker, a leaner man with a gaunt face, started moving towards Art. "I said, beat it, old man." This was it. This was his moment. As the gaunt man lunged, Art didn't raise the mop to strike. Instead, he dropped into a low crouch, his movement surprisingly fluid. He wasn't a fighter, but he was a worker, and his muscles knew how to move. He yanked the metal lid off the water valve box, the screech of rusted iron grating through the air. The gaunt man hesitated, confused by the bizarre action. With a grunt of effort, Art shoved the end of the mop's wooden handle into the valve's large, rusty wheel, using it as a giant lever. He threw his entire weight against it. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, with a deep, groaning shriek of protesting metal, the valve turned. A subterranean rumble answered. A split second later, from a sprinkler head embedded in the asphalt directly next to the gaunt man, a geyser of water erupted with the force of a fire hose. It hit him square in the chest, knocking him off his feet, and sent him skidding across the wet pavement, howling in surprise and pain. The chaotic roar of water filled the air, creating a sudden, unpredictable curtain. The leader and the third assailant flinched, momentarily blinded and disoriented. In that single moment of shock and confusion, Art Bellamy finally stood up to his full height. The fear was still there, but it was now channeled into a fierce, protective energy. He raised the mop, water streaming from its strings. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was a problem. The dad reflex. Chaos was an old acquaintance of Art's. As a single father, he'd learned to thrive in it, from diaper blowouts to toddler tantrums in the cereal aisle. This, however, was chaos of a different, more violent magnitude. The erupting sprinkler was his opening gambit, a moment of shock and all bought with a trickle of plumbing knowledge. It wouldn't last long. The leader, Hoodie, recovered first, his face a mass of fury as he wiped water from his eyes. He barked an order to the third man, a bulky, silent type who had yet to speak. Take care of him. The bulky man charged through the spraying water, ignoring the soaking. Art had no martial arts training, no slick moves. What he had was a parent's reflex, the instinct to act without thought to protect. As the man lunged, Art didn't swing the mop like a bat. Instead, he thrust it forward like a spear, aiming low. The wet, heavy mop head wrapped around the man's ankles. Art yanked back with all his strength, a move he'd used 1,000 times to pull a rug out from under for cleaning. The bulky man's legs swept out from under him. He crashed to the asphalt with a heavy, satisfying thud, the air whooshing out of his lungs. But Art had no time to celebrate. Hoodie was already moving, not towards Art, but towards Alara, who was frozen against her car, a statue of fear. He was done playing. He pulled a knife from his pocket, the blade flicking open with a menacing click. "You're going to pay for that, you cleaner piece of trash," he spat, his focus entirely on his original target. A cold dread washed over Art, colder than the water from the sprinklers. This had just escalated beyond a distraction. This was life or death. The man on the ground was already groaning, trying to get up. The gaunt one was shaking his head, rising from where the water blast had hit him. Art was out of tricks, and a mop was no match for a knife. His eyes met Alara's. The defiance was gone, replaced by a silent, pleading terror. It was a look that stripped away all his own fear, leaving behind a pure, unadulterated purpose. He remembered a night years ago, holding a feverish Lily in his arms, racing to the ER, his world narrowed to a single point. Save her. This was the same. Hoodie was steps from Alara, the knife raised. Art did the only thing he could think of. He roared. It wasn't a battle cry, but a raw, primal sound of father's fury, a sound that made Hoodie hesitate for a fraction of a second. In that fraction, Art moved. He didn't charge the knife. He lunged for his custodial cart, which stood where he'd left it, a faithful steed loaded with its odd arsenal. Hoodie, thinking Art was fleeing, smirked and turned back to Alara. Art's hand closed not around a weapon, but around a simple plastic spray bottle of industrial-strength glass cleaner. He spun around, and as Hoodie turned back towards him, annoyed by the interruption, Art squeezed the trigger. A precise jet of blue liquid hit the man square in the eyes. Hoodie screamed, a high-pitched sound of agony and surprise. He dropped the knife, clawing at his face. The chemicals weren't deadly, but they burned, blinding him instantly. The world seemed to slow down. The gaunt man was on his feet. The bulky one was rising. Art stood between them and Alara, his chest heaving, a spray bottle in one hand and his mop in the other. He was a ridiculous sight, a laughingstock, but he was also an immovable object. They would have to go through him. He saw the calculation in the gaunt man's eyes. The goal had changed. This wasn't about the CO anymore. This was about pride. This was about the three of them being humiliated by a janitor and his cleaning supplies. "You're dead," the gaunt man whispered, and he started forward, pulling a small black club from his jacket. Art braced himself, his mind screaming apologies to Lily. He'd tried. He'd really tried. But then, a new sound cut through the chaos of the water and the groans of the blinded leader. The distant, beautiful, rising and falling wail of police sirens. Lots of them. The gaunt man and the bulky one froze, their heads snapping towards the sound. Their faces paled. The plan, whatever it was, had completely and utterly fallen apart. They exchanged a panicked look. The mission was a failure. Without another word, they grabbed their blinded, swearing leader, hauling him to his feet. They stumbled, half dragging him, toward the dark sedan parked in the shadows, leaving the knife and the zip ties behind. Tires screeched as they peeled out of the parking lot, vanishing into the night just as the first red and blue lights flashed at the school's entrance. The sprinkler continued to spray, a surreal fountain in the middle of the violence. Art stood there, soaked to bone, his entire body trembling with adrenaline and delayed shock. The mop slipped from his fingers and clattered to the wet ground. He turned slowly. Alara Thorne was sliding down the side of her car, her legs finally giving out. She landed on the asphalt, hugging her knees, her body shaking with silent, violent sobs. The powerful, untouchable CO was gone. In her place was just a woman, terrified and saved. Art took a step toward her, then another, his own legs feeling like rubber. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't a hero. He was just Art. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space, and simply stood watch as a police car swarmed the lot, their lights painting the scene in frantic strokes of red and blue. The unlikely alliance. The schoolyard, once a place of quiet twilight, was now a blistering carnival of emergency response. Police radios crackled. Uniformed officers cordoned off the area with yellow tape, and a paramedic tried to wrap a shock blanket around Art's broad, sodden shoulders. He shrugged it off gently, his eyes never leaving Alara Thorne. She was sitting in the open door of an ambulance, a paramedic assessing a cut on her forehead. The sharp, commanding aura had returned, but it was fractured. Her hands, usually so steady for signing million-dollar contracts, trembled as she held a cup of water. Her gaze kept drifting to Art, a complex mix of awe, confusion, and profound gratitude. A detective, a weary-looking man with a kind face named Inspector Morales, approached Art first, notebook in hand. "Mr. Bellamy? Arthur? I'm Inspector Morales. I need to get a statement from you. Can you walk me through what happened?" Art did, his voice a low rumble, sticking to facts. He described hearing the voices, seeing the altercation, the failed radio, the sprinkler, the mop, the glass cleaner. He made it sound like a series of logical, if desperate, steps, downplaying the sheer terror that had underpinned every single one. Morales listened, his eyebrows rising higher and higher. "You use a mop and Windex to fight off three-armed assailants?" Art looked down at his work boots, suddenly self-conscious. "Didn't have anything else on hand, sir." Before Morales could respond, a new voice cut through the air, sharp and clear despite its tremor. "He didn't fight them off, Inspector. He saved my life." Alara Thorne was standing there, the silver emergency blanket draped over her shoulders like a queen's robe. She walked over, dismissing the paramedic with a slight wave of her hand. She stopped in front of Art, and for the first time, she truly looked at him, not through him. "You asked for my name earlier," she said to Morales, though her eyes remained locked on Art's. "It's Alara Thorne, and everything this man has told you is true. Those men were going to kidnap me, or worse. They disabled my car. They neutralized security. They had a plan for everything." She paused, her voice softening almost imperceptibly. "Everything except him." Art didn't know what to say. Just doing my job, ma'am," he mumbled, the words feeling incredibly inadequate. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Your job description includes advanced tactical distraction and close-quarters combat with cleaning supplies? She asked, a hint of her boredom with returning. Art finally met her gaze. The school prides itself on a full-service approach. Inspector Morales coughed, hiding a smile. Mr. Bellamy, you're a hero, a very resourceful one. He closed his notebook. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. But for now, you're free to go. Is there someone we can call for you? You've been through a lot. The question was a bucket of cold reality. Lily. Art's eyes widened in panic. He fumbled for his phone, his wet fingers slipping on the screen. It was past 7. Mrs. Gable's program closed at 6:30. He had a dozen missed calls and a string of frantic texts. Art, where are you? Lily is worried. I can't stay much longer. I have my own family. My daughter, he said, his voice thick with a new kind of fear. I'm so late. I have to go. I have to. Ilera watched the transformation. The steadfast protector who had faced down 3 men was now unraveling over being late for pickup. It was the most human thing she had ever witnessed. Where is she? Ilera asked, her tone now all business. Mrs. Gable's. The after-school program on Elm. Art said, already turning to leave. I'm sorry, Inspector. I really have to. Stop, Ilera commanded, but it wasn't harsh. She pulled out her own phone. Its screen cracked from the struggle. She dialed a number. James? It's Ilera. I need you to do something for me immediately. There's a Mrs. Gable's after-school program on Elm Street. A little girl named Lily Bellamy is there. Her father has been unavoidably detained helping me. I need you to go there, right now. Assure Mrs. Gable that everything is fine, that Mr. Bellamy is with me, and that he will be there shortly. Stay with Lily until we arrive. Do not leave her side. Understood. She listened for a moment. Good. She ended the call and looked at Art. My driver, James. He's 5 minutes away. He will stay with her. She will be safe. Art could only stare, his mind struggling to process the sheer efficiency of it, the problem that had seemed so monumental to him. A worried child, an annoyed caregiver, had been solved in a 15-second phone call by a woman who moved worlds for a living. The tension drained from his shoulders. The gratitude that washed over him was so profound it was dizzying. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Thorne. Ilera, she corrected him softly. Then she turned to Inspector Morales. Inspector, Mr. Bellamy will give his full statement in the morning. Right now, he's coming with me. We're going to pick up his daughter. It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact. Morales simply nodded, understanding he was witnessing the formation of an alliance between 2 people from utterly different worlds, forged in the most unlikely of fires. Ilera turned back to Art. Come on, she said, her voice quieter now, devoid of its CO edge. Let's go get your little girl. Redefining strength. The ride to Mrs. Gable's was silent, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. Art sat in the plush leather back seat of Ilera's luxury sedan, watching the city lights blur past. James, the driver, had said nothing, his eyes occasionally meeting Art's in the rear-view mirror with a look of deep respect. Ilera sat beside him, staring out her own window. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary exhaustion and the first tremors of post-traumatic shock. She kept replaying the events in her mind, the cold fear, the glint of the knife, and the absurd, magnificent sight of a janitor creating a geyser with a mop. She had built her empire on a foundation control. She hired the best security, managed every risk, and trusted a very small circle of impeccably vetted people. And yet, her safety had ultimately depended on a man whose name she hadn't known, whose existence she would have otherwise never registered. It was a humbling, world-altering revelation. They pulled up to a modest, warmly lit house with a sign that read, Mrs. Gable's Little Learners. Before the car had even fully stopped, Art was out the door. Ilera watched him through the window, his entire being shifted. The shoulders that had been square for a fight were now soft with paternal concern. The weary janitor, the fierce protector, they were both gone. Now he was just Dad. The door flew open, and a small tornado of pink backpack and flying brown hair launched itself into his arms. Daddy. Art caught Lily, lifting her up and holding her tightly, burying his face in her hair. I'm so sorry, baby bug. I'm so sorry I'm late. Mrs. Gable was mad. Lily whispered loudly. But then a nice man in a suit came and said you were a hero and that you were coming. Art looked over Lily's head to see James standing a respectful distance away, giving him a small, firm nod. Mrs. Gable was in the doorway, her earlier anger replaced by bewildered curiosity, especially as she saw the sleek, expensive car and the woman now stepping out of it. Ilera approached, looking out of place in her torn, expensive blouse and the now drooped emergency blanket. She stopped next to Art and looked at the little girl in his arms. Lily peered back, her eyes wide. Are you the CEO? Lily asked, with the brutal honesty of a child. A genuine, uncalculated smile broke across Ilera's face. Yes, I am. And your daddy was very brave tonight. Later, after profuse thanks to a flustered Mrs. Gable and after James had been instructed to go home, the three of them stood on the sidewalk. The CO, the janitor, and the little girl. The car was gone. How will you get home? Art asked, confused. We'll walk, Ilera said simply. It's a nice night, if that's okay. Art, holding a now sleepy Lily in his arms, just nodded. They walked in silence for a block, the events of the evening hanging between them. They were from a company I had to shut down last month, Ilera said quietly, her voice cutting through the night. Dozens of layoffs. I knew the CEO was angry. I didn't know he was desperate. She shook her head. I'm used to being the villain in someone's story. I make tough decisions. I never thought it would lead to that. Art adjusted Lily's weight in his arms. You were just doing your job, he said, echoing his own earlier inadequate words. She stopped walking and turned to him. So were you? But you went far, far beyond it, Arthur. You risked everything for me. Why? Art looked down at Lily's peaceful, sleeping face. It's what you do, he said, his voice thick with emotion. When someone needs help, you do it. He finally spoke his truth, the secret shame that had fueled his quiet life. I haven't always been there for people. I failed before. Miserably. This job, it's simple. I clean up messes. I fix small problems. It's what I'm good for. Tonight, I just saw another mess that needed cleaning up. Ilera listened, and she understood. She saw the man completely, perhaps for the first time, not just his courage, but the pain that preceded it, the failure that made this victory so profound. You're wrong, you know, she said softly. You're not good for small problems. You solved a very, very big one tonight. You didn't just clean up a mess, Arthur. You stopped one from being made. They had reached Art's small, neatly kept duplex. The lights were off. It was just a house. But to him, it was everything. I can never repay you, Ilera said, standing on the path to his front door. You already did, Art said, nodding back toward Mrs. Gable's. You got me to my kid. He turned to go inside, but Ilera's voice stopped him. Arthur. He looked back. A man like you shouldn't be fixing leaks, she said, her CEO voice returning, but with a new purpose. You should be managing the entire building, the entire district. I sit on the school board. Your bravery tonight, it's a headline. But your character? That's the real story. I'd like to discuss your future. A real future. Not just for my gratitude. For my own damn investment in this community. Art stood there, on his own doorstep, his daughter in his arms, and for the first time in a very long time, he saw a flicker of a different future. Not one built on the ashes of his past failures, but one constructed from the strength he had rediscovered in himself tonight. He gave her a small, tired, genuine smile. We can talk about it. But right now, I've got to get my daughter to bed. It's a school night. Ilera Thorne, billionaire CEO, nodded in complete agreement. Of course. Good night, Arthur. Good night, Lily. She watched him carry his daughter inside, the door closing softly behind them. The street was quiet again. The night's violence was over, replaced by a profound peace. The janitor with the mop hadn't just saved the CO. He had, in his quiet, unassuming way, reminded them both what true strength looked like. And for Alara Thorne, that was an asset more valuable than any on her balance sheet.